hope I'm saying that correctly. Spanish Morocco.
Welcome back, everyone, and this morning we are pulling into the dock in the center of the autonomous Spanish city of Ceuta. And overnight, we have made the 122 nautical mile journey from Montreal and in the process have traveled from Europe to northern Africa. So this will be the sixth continent officially for the doobies and magic number 7 for the mid-fit culture.
Number 4.
This is the marathon group, right? And I see no better way to celebrate a new continent than going for a run. So lace 'em up. We're heading out for another episode of Running History. All right. Before this journey, I had never heard of Ceuta, but once we saw the itinerary and that we would be visiting Spanish Morocco, the main question that came to mind is why is there a Spanish city sitting on the North African coastline? And the answer is, as it has been throughout history, follow the money. Ceuta sits at a strategic point to the south along the Strait of Gibraltar and the mythical home of the southern Pillar of Hercules, Monte Hacho. Control of this 8 nautical mile pinch point between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic Ocean meant a considerable influence on trade, which became even more critical as empires expanded into the Americas. Greek mythology set this far west location as the spot where Hercules went about retrieving the cattle of Geryon during his 10th labor. So Hercules is credited as smashing through the mountains to join the Atlantic and Mediterranean seas, unless he actually pulled the two continents closer together in order to prevent sea monsters from entering the Mediterranean. As there are 2 versions of the subpart of the myth, so there are 2 statues here in Ceuta, one pulling pillars together, which is out by the harbor, and the one where he's pushing them apart. Whether it was pulling or pushing, the Strait of Gibraltar represented the end of the known world for most of the ancient societies of the Mediterranean. In slightly more modern-day history, around 1000 BC, Abila, Mountain of God, was founded by the Phoenicians, who recognized the strategic significance of this defensible port, controlling trade routes as far as modern-day Great Britain. As we have learned on this trip, the descendants of the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians, maintained their hold on the Western Med until the Second Punic War, when Rome took control of the city and rebranded it Septim for the 7 hills in the area. After Rome, the repeated story of Vandals and Byzantines, ultimately replaced by the Islamic conquest of the Maghreb, followed, and its city remained in the hands of the Berbers until 1415, when King John I of Portugal overwhelmed the city with 45,000 soldiers packed into 200 ships. The battle for Ceuta was where John's son, Henry the Navigator, distinguished himself, and Ceuta fell by sunset on August 22nd. Our run this morning has taken us to the unfinished batteries of Santa Catalina. What is striking is the views of the Spanish coast and the long vista across the strait to the Rock of Gibraltar. The smell of some kind of sweet clover adds to this beautiful section of coast. Our big decision? Take the mountain route around the south end of the isthmus or head back on the relatively flat of the northern shore. Yeah, we take the easy way home.
I think the road back might be rough. All right.
So in 1581, after a dispute over succession to the crown in Portugal, Philip II of Spain was also crowned Philip I of Portugal, and in the next 60 years, Ceuta gained more Spanish residents. In fact, enough that after the Portuguese Restoration War in 1640, the city sided with Spain over Portugal, and in 1668 was ceded to Spain formally by the Treaty of Lisbon, and has remained Spanish ever since, with a small exception. Much like in Minorca during the Napoleonic Wars of the early 19th century, Spain allowed Britain to occupy Ceuta, and shockingly, after the wars, the English actually gave the city back to Spain. General Francisco Franco began what became the Spanish Civil War when he took control of the Spanish army in Africa. Ceuta became one of the first battlegrounds of this bloody fascist time in the history of Spain. Throughout the years, battles and skirmishes have occurred with Morocco, who claims the territory is rightfully theirs, but Spain sees this small autonomous city as integral to the country. After a seemingly nonsensical and overly complicated journey back to the Encore, it's time for a quick cleanup, and Donna Doobie and I head into the main town of Ceuta.
Hey, good morning, everybody. And now, Donna Doobie and I are setting our first foot on Africa.
Our first stop, the Royal Walls. The Portuguese were hell-bent on holding this strategic piece of land, so almost immediately began building out an immense fortress, complete with a navigable ocean-fed moat. The fortress was continually improved up and through the 18th century. Now, over the centuries, the fortress withstood multiple sieges from the Berbers, but it never fell in battle, with gun placements and reinforced structures stretching from seaside to beachside. The embattlement walls and barracks of the fort serve today as galleries as well as a small museum.
So it costs to get in the church, but this is free? No. Oh, look at, there's your coat of arms.
On either side of the entrance to the city moat are two large beaches, Chorrillo to the west and La Bibera to the east. Chilly late November, we don't see much in the way of beachgoers this morning, but there are lifts to get you down to the sand and water, and I bet these places are hopping on a hot summer day.
We can GoPro, look.
I looked all the way down this wall here and that gave me vertigo.
The Cathedral of Ceuta is unfortunately closed today, but this beautiful 18th century church was built on the remains of a former Byzantine church that was then built into a mosque, and then another cathedral that was replaced in 1726 following one of the many sieges of Ceuta. From the cathedral, parks lead to the Paseo Alcide Sanchez Parados, and we get glimpses of the Portuguese influence on Ceuta through the use of tiled reliefs and building facades. 2 blocks further down, we can see the foundations of the Roman city of Septum. This walk is beautiful and fairly, for Europe, modern stroll through the churros and chocolate shops and dotted with fountains and statues, which leads us to Hercules. It's looking out into the Strait of Gibraltar, pushing the pillars apart. The Monumento a la Constitución evokes a teacher explaining the equal protections provided to all Spaniards under the articles of their constitution. Just steps away is the Mercado. In this multi-level structure, you can find fresh fish and meats, produce, and also many shops selling household goods. And of course, there's always a shop selling churros and chocolate. Up the main shopping street of Paseo de Revín, we come across the Casa de los Dragones. There's not really an attraction here except the building itself. So we have dragons and royal walls? Head on a swivel now. Where's Daenerys? Our tour around Ceuta continues through the Plaza de la Reyes, and holy crap, what's this? The Monumento a la Semana Santa, or Holy Week, represents a traditional pointed hood originally worn by sinners during the Spanish Inquisition to denote their crimes and sins, often worn before being executed. The capriots worn during Holy Week now are red, in fact, and now are meant symbolically to keep the penitent seeking to be closer to God from public shame. From Holy Week to preparation for the birth of Christ, and the Christmas tree is almost decorated. A few more blocks to the south and we are at the ocean.
Sees the Atlas Mountains in the background, Morocco. Setting up big fishing nets here.
Back from our walk along the cliffs, I'm feeling pretty good about not running these hills earlier in the day. We come back to visit the nymph of Ceuta, Calypso. Okay, it's a stretch to think this was where Calypso held Odysseus for 7 years, but keeps the theme for Ceuta being the gates to the end of the world. Now I'm starting to worry about that long boat trip ahead. Heading back toward the port, our last stop is the Sanctuary of Santa Maria of Africa. This highly gilded small church traces its roots to 1421, when Henry the Navigator sent the image of Our Lady of Africa and ordered the image be venerated in a church dedicated to the Virgin Mary. The current structure was consecrated in 1752. We've done a fair bit to get the feel of this beautiful corner of Spain/Africa, so time for a little lunch.
Oh man, I wish I had a fishing pole.
And an afternoon pick-me-up of espresso and lemon cake. This evening we have a little close-up magic with Hector in the Grand Salon.
Open the card. Show everybody. Ace of diamonds, DD.
And after the show, we get a real glimpse of the traffic lining up to exit the Mediterranean Sea. I think the captain said we were 20th in line, so we wouldn't reach the Atlantic until well after midnight. This was also the evening where we hit a frustrating breaking point with Seabourn. Our main issue was that even though we had put in food tolerance issues prior to the cruise into the website, and even though we stopped before boarding to ensure Seabourn had those issues noted, and even though we had repeat those at 6 of our first 9 dinners, and even though Seabourn has a full computer system noting guests' food issues, tonight was a bit of last straw in the dining room. The service and the attitude was not what we had ever experienced with the cruise line before, and I went to bed pissed. So the next day is our first sea day. Lots of time to provide that instant feedback in the Seabourn Source app over breakfast. Breakfast, in fact, that looks like if I asked ChatGPT, create an egg, sausage, and cheese croissant for a redneck. We shall see where this goes, if anywhere. On this practice sea day, I tried the new routine of getting some work and video editing done in the morning, hitting the gym just before noon, which almost passed the lunch hour at the sushi restaurant. But they graciously made me an excellent gyoza bento box lunch at 1:45, and with a wonderful smile and joy. Did I mention before I love this venue? So for anyone not working this morning, there's dance lessons with Holly and Evan from the Seabourn 6, a lecture concerning Russia from 1547 to the present, name that tune and trivia in the club, and golf putting before high tea, and then the beginning of the evening activities. Now this is the last night on board for about half of the guests who will depart tomorrow in Lisbon. So pre-dinner tonight is the officer and team member salute, canopies, special drinks, caviar, of course, and live music around the pool deck. We also say goodbye to our captain, Ryan Whitaker, who is taking a well-deserved holiday break with the family and will be leaving us tomorrow. Tonight is our return to Solis for dinner, which always starts with a cocktail in the Solis bar, which is a great place to enjoy some real craft cocktails, like the ones you actually see in the Seabourn commercials, and live acoustic music with Michael. Our tableside service tonight is for the panzanella and a delicious bread salad with romaine, plum tomatoes, cucumbers, onions, and Parmesan crisp. Oh, and more Parmesan, of course. Donna Doobie and I split the bistecca alla fiorentina, a porterhouse for two, while Medfit Culture enjoys the bouillabaisse and a very impressive 16-ounce bone in New York. We're going to finish the night again with a little glacé and an Ursula Andress affogato with vodka. This you just can't beat. It's been a wonderful meal with no issues. We can't wait to see Lisbon tomorrow, our last stop on the continent of Europe, and our last sight of land for 8 more days. So join us then. Good night.